Hello, my name is Dr. Roger Elmer, Advanced Neurospinal Solutions, and you've brought your child in because you'd like to learn more about the brain, how it functions, and you may be dealing with certain challenges, autistic spectrum disorders, maybe learning disorders. And so this presentation is to help you understand a little bit better about the brain, how it develops, and why some of those challenges exist. And it leads to possibilities and options to actually change the brain and help it develop. So the first thing I would like to go over is how the brain develops. As a child is born, the baby's brain and nervous system are basically inert. They haven't been developed yet. And so it's an uncharted territory. It's not an adult brain that's in a small form. It's an undeveloped brain. And it depends upon movement in order to develop. It depends upon sensation to grow the tracts of the brain. And so because it depends on movement to feel and feeling to grow, it's a conundrum where the system has to have some kind of a kickstart to engage it to grow the brain. That kickstart is known as primitive reflexes. Primitive reflexes are basic hardwired reflexes that are designed into or hardwired into the brainstem to relate to basic functions, mostly survival, and the actual birth process to the baby actually contributes to birthing. And so these reflexes get the movement started so that the actual sensation can begin the development of the brain. So if you're developing a brain, it's like building a house.
You can't see it.
Can't see it? If I do this,
There you
you
go.
see that?
Yeah.
Primitive reflexes. They are the foundation that creates the movement, and that movement allows the sensation. The sensation begins to build the brain. So if I have a brain and a brain stem with the cerebellum here, I'm going to create movement like breathing. Didn't have to breathe when you were inside the womb, but as soon as the baby comes out, the cord doesn't help, and so now we have to breathe on our own. So we have within the brainstem a hardwired reflex that causes us to breathe. So it stimulates the movement, kind of like a kickstart of a lawnmower. All of a sudden the lawnmower goes and it can keep going as long as it doesn't run out of gas. Well, this stimulates the movement of the body, and breathing is a whole body experience. So all those muscles and tendons and joints are going through mobility, which at the same time also sends signals back up to the brain and begins to build different parts of the brain. Because I'm actually moving and sensing, I can send information now to the frontal lobes, and because I'm moving, to start to develop the higher centers within the frontal lobe. And we depend upon that frontal lobe for not just survival, but for our personality, our ability to think, our ability to communicate with others and all that. And so this development of that primitive reflex is eventually meant to go away, because then we start taking over the breathing process, and the hardwiring gets overridden. Once we're developing those primitive reflexes, another one is digestion. Digestion and what we call mouthing in neurology. It's because you didn't have to eat inside the womb, now you have to. So now you have to develop all the structures, and we tend to think of it as muscle activities, but really it's driven through neuronal pools. The nervous system drives those muscles, and so as the baby starts to suckle and suck, and as the baby starts to pull things down, to pull the fluids down, it necessitates the development of cranial nerves number 5, the motor pool, cranial nerves number 7, the motor pool, which is movement of the face, facial muscles and that, It develops the need to swallow, which is cranial nerve number 9, and cranial nerve number 10, which is digestion. And that's why every kid has problems when they're first born with digestion, because it is a learning process. And they're developing the pools that cause that to happen. And so as they're developing that mouthing process, they're developing the chain, the homologous chain that creates that, but also they're giving a feeling to the child. And so that system is also developing other parts of the brain and stimulating the possibilities of the frontal lobe starting to take over control. When you stroke their face and they're hungry, they will immediately turn their head looking for mom. We call that rooting. And it connects this mouthing chain to the movement of the neck and body to get stuff to eat. If you take a teenager that's hungry and stroke their face, they should not look for mom. They should have that system overridden. And so that primitive reflex should go away as a matter of stimulating it over and over again, and then we develop the higher level centers. The primitive reflexes themselves are the circuitry, the foundation of the circuitry as we override them for the sensory motor system. That sensory motor system, it houses your balance, your posture, your ability to stand up against gravity and move. Your ability to talk is also a motoric activity. And so the development of that circuitry is dependent upon the primitive reflexes being overridden, because that circuit, it's kind of like a motherboard, and the motherboard, we have to develop that, and then we can tack stuff on top of it to override and give higher functions. Like if you have a motherboard and you want to put a video card on it or a sound card on it, it overrides the systems that were already there. But if those systems weren't there, we couldn't override it. Then this sensory motor system develops the circuitry that we depend upon for cognition, which is the ability to think. The ability to think. The ability to think about thinking. The ability for my brain to talk to itself, right versus left, front to back, so that my brain can actually go through the process of thinking. That circuitry, as we develop it, is the circuitry that is the foundation of information and social skills. I'll call it skills. And social skills. If we don't have, if my brain can't talk to itself, it can't connect with your brain. It's impossible. And so that's why some have challenges, because they haven't developed the circuitry to do that, to tell them that they need to do something different. It's like speaking a foreign language to them. It's like Urdu. If they don't understand it, they don't understand it. And they're seeing facial expressions on people because of their dismay for their activity. They're too close, they got too close into my space and they don't like it, but they can't read it. It's like a foreign language to them. So all of this is dependent, we got to develop each layer of these skills in order to be able to use the higher level skills. Let's say I have a problem with either a primitive reflex or a group of primitive reflexes, they're all related, and it leaves a hole in my ability, in my circuitry, and they're expressive, and it makes it so that I can't develop all the other circuitry above it. So it's like with building a house. If the foundation has a problem, we see it in the cracks in the ceilings and in the roof. And that's the same problem we have here. So the beginning of solving these challenges is to look for where are the problems and how deep are these problems. Because if we have expressive primitive reflexes, we can't progress further until we've actually expressed it to the point where they're gone. Imagine, I'll give you this symphony analogy. Imagine there's 100 pieces on your left and 100 pieces in your symphony on the right. And I've got to have all the pieces. If you don't have a flute in your symphony, you can't do flute stuff. And half of a flute is not a piccolo. You got to have the entirety of the circuitry that does the flute stuff. If I've got, and this is the relationship between things like ADHD and autism, and the severity of the problem, because it's basically all the same problem. The difference is what pieces aren't there and what pieces aren't functioning. If I'm missing 10 pieces on the right side, I have usually what we would call ADHD in one of its three formats. If I have 30 pieces missing, then I would fit into a category of autism, and it could be any of the 30 pieces, and that's why every autistic spectrum kid is different, because it depends on what actually got developed and what didn't, what is overdeveloped, and that. So the other part of the symphony is we have specialization, which is the pieces, but we also have an organization, coordination, and harmony. If you have a conductor that wants to conduct the symphony and he says, we're going to play the same note over and over and over again, that's going to be monotonous and it's not going to do much. It's not very specialized. But on the other end of the spectrum, if we have a conductor who says, I want you each to play your favorite song in whatever key you want, I'm going for coffee, that's complete and utter chaos. And we see plenty of neurological problems that are that. They're chaos. The brilliance of the brain isn't its specialization, it's the timings. When the trumpet is playing, the flute is off. When the trumpet stops playing, the flute comes on, and it's instantaneous. Also, all of the energy flow and that has to be in coordination with that so that the trumpet can continue to play when it needs to. The problem is, if the flute's supposed to be playing and it's not, and I get the trumpet all the time, it grows beyond its bounds and it starts to become very harsh. And that's why a lot of these children have problems with hypersensitivities to smell, hypersensitivities to light, and all that. And so balancing the system, getting all the pieces, but also getting the organizations and timings and coordinations within the brain, that causes that brain to be like an adult brain. And that's where we're taking it. So let's talk briefly about the right brain versus the left brain. What does the right brain do, and what does the left brain do? The right brain deals with executive functions, and if you've ever seen an executive, it makes sense because he has very excellent control, of himself and that. But on the right brain, we're dealing with the executive functions that relate to emotionality and also social skills. And so he has ability to read faces and ability to act appropriately, to watch what they're saying land on somebody, and then act in kind with what he sees. That's a social skill. And in the emotionality, he's able to feel harsh emotions within his system and not absolutely act upon them. He has control of those systems. He feels the hormones surging within his body because he's frustrated or angry, but you wouldn't know it because it's not on his face and not in his actions. That's emotional skills. So we're talking about emotions and social skill. And we'll put this in terms of emotional control. Okay? On the left side of the brain, the executive functions relate to specifically hard facts, concepts, time management. We're dealing with the ability to make goals and finish goals. We're able to agendize, organize. These are all skills of the left brain. And the thing is that we need both. Many children have an absolutely powerful left brain, but they have zero skills on the right. They have significant emotional control issues and social immaturity. And so my job is to figure out which it is and to begin driving it and to work with the brain and help it develop. These also relate when one side of the brain is up versus down. Think of the left brain as the gas pedal of your brain, and the left brain is your brake pedal. And it also relates in terms of driving the immune system, driving your hormonal system, and all that. And so when we have one part of the brain that is significantly skilled and the other part that is significantly weak, we have a gas pedal on the left, but we don't have much of a brake on the right. And that relates not just to these skills that we talked about, but also immune system, the possible breaking down of the immune system and the function. We also deal with the hormonal system, which contributes significantly to the child's emotions, systemic emotions, and that. So I hope this helped you understand a little bit better about your child's brain, how it develops, possible answers to these challenges. These are called developmental delays. If one side is developmentally delayed, we have an issue that we need to restart and get developing again. Also, when we have one side of the brain that is up compared to the other, they can't talk to each other as well. It's kind of like having a Pentium 5 and a Pentium 3. They can talk to each other, but it's very difficult or very challenging. In autism, we're dealing with a Pentium 5 and a 286, and they can't talk to each other. So it's like the two sides don't exist. It's like they have their corpus callosum cut, which was a popular therapy done for certain kinds of seizure disorders back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. So, but that kind of issue. So I hope that helped you understand, and I'm here to answer all your questions relating to it and help your child if possible. Thank you.